On my third attempt at the Australian Junior Championships, I finally managed to clinch the title, but not without a whole lot of luck in the last round. And you'll start to understand in this video why the final two rounds are just so important in a tournament. Also, I try to explain to you the differences between Blitz, Classical, and Rapid Chess, and my take on that. And I've also chosen one of my best games from the particular tournament to show you, and hopefully you'll learn something from that too. So stick around and I'll see you in the video. So heading into the last round of this tournament, the cross table looks something like the following. As you can see, I'm a full point below the leader, and Vincent up until this point hadn't lost a single game in classical chess, so no one was expecting him to drop points in the final round. Anyhow, I won my last game and I headed to the hotel room and later for dinner. That's when one of my friends came over and said, "You actually have to go back to the tournament hall and play your playoff game." And that's when I thought, playoff for what? So I went over and I checked the final standings, and I actually noticed that there were 3 players tied for first place. And of the 3 players, I ended up in the top 2 for the playoffs, and Sam Chow had actually missed out. And of the 3 players, I think Vincent was by far the best classical player, and I actually think Sam was by far the best in blitz chess, but rapid was sort of like the sweet spot for me in the middle. And having known that there was going to be a rapid playoff, I knew that I had decent chances here to make up for my previous results. It was a 2-game rapid playoff match, and in the first one I was white. I opted for the Black Mardima Gambit, a surprise opening which had worked well for me in the past. I actually caught my opponent off guard and went on to get an advantage early on, which I managed to convert into a win. After the game, one of the spectators, I am Gary Lane, actually commented saying that it was a very risky and brave opening choice from me, considering it was a very important game. And I found this very funny, considering where I actually learnt the opening from. Anyhow, in the second game, I managed to hold the position with the black pieces, and that's how I ended up winning the title. Before this video, I've chosen one of my best games from the following tournament to show you, and it was one from the earlier rounds I played against Devram. It started out as an English after 1c4, c6, knight f3, knight f6, g3, d5, and I opted for a double fianchetto setup, which is very popular at all levels. Here I thought I got my move order wrong though, because after the move bishop to g4, I was under a lot of pressure. I didn't see a way to defend the knight and also defend against the threat of queen d4 coming later. After a very long think, I played the move bishop to g2 because it looked like the most natural. And after bishop takes f3, pawn takes, and queen d4, we get to a very interesting moment in the game where it looks like white is dropping a pawn. Initially, I thought that I could play the move knight to c3 here and just sacrifice the pawn, allow queen takes c4, and maybe castle the king. And yes, maybe I do have a little bit of compensation here, but it doesn't look like a whole lot because black's structure is very solid, and he's just going to drop the queen back at worst to a6, e6, and develop the rest of his pieces. So I didn't think the open b file here was enough compensation, even with the bishop pair. So we needed to come up with something different. So after the move queen to d4, sometimes you don't necessarily need to defend a piece which is being attacked in chess, and you should look for ways to create a counter threat or a counter attack. And here I noticed the move queen b3. It came after a very long think, of course, because it didn't strike out immediately. But after the move queen to b3, we noticed that queen takes a1 is met by queen takes b7. And if black is not careful here, it's not actually the rook that we're going to take, but it's actually the checkmating threat on c8, which is actually causing the most problems. And e6 here is met by queen c8 check, king e7, and bishop a3. And there's a very nice checkmate with the king on e7, and this is the main problem for black. So after the move queen b3, black actually retreated with queen b6. I was very happy to see this because now we can justify our previous move. We don't trade queens, of course, just keep them on. And we used our bishop pair and the open b file. So bishop b2, knight c3, queen c7 castles, and we have a very comfortable ready position. Here my opponent played something I wasn't expecting, and that was to move queenside castles instead of kingside castles, and this is very risky with an open b file. But I think this is also a good example because it shows you how you can try and take advantage of your opponent's mistakes. So here I played the move rook a to b1. Of course, it's a natural thing to do when your opponent gives you open b file. Black goes for h5. The difference here is that we have the bishop pair, and also our lines of attack are a lot quicker. Also, we haven't created too many weaknesses, whereas black has some holes here which we can attack. Queen a4. So looking to attack with tempo is very important. So after the move bishop c5, we play bishop a3. So I'm trying to create some threats as quickly as possible in response to h4. So don't try to defend, instead try to create some counterattack. Bishop takes a3, queen takes a3, king goes to b8, the rook went to b3, king slides across to a8, and here I played the move rook to b1, again creating a tempo on the pawn on b7, so we will capture that. Rook goes to b8, and now we start to see some sort of mating patterns along the open a file. So I played the move queen to b4, setting up one of these mating patterns, which is the move rook to a3 next, followed by rook takes a7. This is the idea anyway, and then followed by queen a3 checkmate afterwards. So g5 was played, rook a3. So all our moves come with threats, so it doesn't give black any time to get his attack going, because in opposite side casting positions it becomes a race of who is going to break open the opponent's king quicker. And here after the move rook a3, black is already in a real tough spot. So black can play the move pawn to a6 here, which is the move I was expecting. There's a couple of very nice moves here for white. So one of the moves I was thinking at the time to play here was actually knight to b5, hitting the queen, and the idea is that if the pawn captures here, then we can play the move rook takes a6 and utilize this pin with the bishop on f3. Of course, chess is not checkers, and your opponent is never forced to take anything you give them, so here black can move the queen perhaps. But maybe we can continue our attack anyway with queen d6. But this was one of the ideas I had in mind. Instead, black played the move pawn to b6, which is immediately falling into this tactic with knight to b5, hitting the queen. And here after rook b7, well, this drops the queen so we can capture it, and queen d6, hitting the rook and pawn finishes the game off. So this was a short game, but it was one of my favorites I played in this particular tournament. So as you can see, the final 2 rounds of a tournament are just so important, and anything can happen really, so you should just try your best and not try to focus so much on what's happening in the other games. Also, in terms of my thoughts on the time control, I felt that my blitz and rapid chess had improved so much from my online chess, and you shouldn't really neglect that because you never know that when that will come in handy. But in terms of my classical chess, I felt like I was really getting outplayed by the stronger players in the slower time control games, and that's something I really needed to work on if I was going to improve above 2000 and beyond. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you on the next one when I will talk more about how we improved on our long-term critical thinking to get to the next stage. Catch you then.